Don't Let Me In, written by Black Mass 81. Even to this day, there's no explanation as to what actually happened. What's left of our population is still recovering from the events we have called the incident. And we're just as in the dark now as we were a year ago when it happened. Everyone that survived has a story relating to the incident, but we do not discuss what we all encountered that night. I barely talk about it, and it took a lot of alcohol and nudging from some friends to even write it. I'm here to tell you about it, at least what my experience was like during the incident. There was nothing ever reported, the news never covered it, and to be honest, apart from the town itself, or at least what's left of the town, I don't think anyone knows about our incident. Maybe it's for the best. I'm going to try and do my best to share it with you, and just so you know, I'm not a writer. This isn't a story, it's an experience. I am a custodian at a small elementary school about 5 minutes from where I live. The town itself is small, but it's spread out due to farmland and sporadic housing. We even have a small quarry towards the edge of town. I was at work the night the incident took place, busily cleaning my section while listening to a book I had downloaded using the Audible app. It was around 10 o'clock at night, and I was just finishing up the front end of the building when I heard a knock at the main doors. The building was closed and locked up, so there shouldn't be anyone needing to get in. But there was a knock, and I could see the shape of someone standing outside. Curious, I flipped on the exterior front door lights, and to my surprise, one of my oldest friends was standing outside the door, waving enthusiastically. This was strange because of 2 reasons. One, my friend and I haven't spoken for a while due to a conflict we had. 2, she lives in California with her husband, while I live in New Jersey with my wife. What was even stranger was I was just thinking about her and how she was doing, and that maybe I should give her a call and try to mend things. I mean, we did have a 20-plus year friendship that started in high school, and here she is, right in front of me. Something just didn't seem right. I decided not to open the door, but I could still talk to her through the glass. "What the heck?" I asked her quizzically. She smiled, that big, wide smile that I was very familiar with. "Come on, buddy, let me in. It's been a bit since I've seen you, and I just wanted to come visit," she replied, almost bouncing on her feet. Something was very off about her, other than the obvious, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. "Jess, what are you doing here? Don't you have a little boy that needs tending to? I'm really confused right now." Jess just smiled. She ignored my question and continued to beg me to let her in. I wasn't sure what I was dealing with, but I knew that I couldn't let her in. I don't know why. I just felt that everything about this encounter was wrong. She almost didn't seem real, like a copy and pasted version of the friend that I knew. "Jess, I can't let you in, but let me know what hotel you're staying in so I can stop by after work and we can catch up." At this point, my old friend's smile faded and her bubbly persona ceased. She placed both hands on the heavy doors and pushed it hard, cracking the double-paned glass.
"Let me in, buddy."
Her voice wasn't her voice anymore. It was this gravelly voice that didn't even sound natural. It sounded produced, like a mimic of what a human would sound like. Her eyes were so dark with no pupils, and she was grinning now. A large, wide grin with rows of sharp and pointy teeth. "What?" I stammered. I stepped back from the doors, stepping out of the main foyer into the inner building, where I then locked the next set of doors, almost instinctively. Her black eyes narrowed at this, and she slammed her hands even harder against the glass, sending spiderweb cracks everywhere.
"Oh, buddy, let me in so I can chew on your heart,"
she crooned. She didn't look like Jess anymore. She looked like a faded sketch of Jess, a hollow shell that began shimmering and becoming fuzzy. She started to melt as if her whole body was a cloud of some sort of liquid. It started to get bigger and bigger. Its limbs began striking the door harder, bending them on their frame. The Jess/thing began to shriek.
I'm gonna tear you apart. I'm going to eat your heart. I'm going to feed you your own heart, buddy.
Its voice lingered on Buddy. I didn't think you could hear a smile, but I sure did. Forget this, I said, and I turned to run. I didn't know where to even go, but I knew that I had to get away from the doors and make sure that the other doors in the building were all locked. As I turned to book it, I heard a loud crash behind me. The glass had shattered, and I knew that that thing that was in the shape of my friend was going to come after me. I wheeled around to face it, but fortunately for me, whatever it was gone. Reality snapped back around me, and I could hear it, faintly at first. The screams of others who weren't so lucky. Their voices being carried across the farmland by the wind. Screams of pain and agony and fear. I could hear pops in the background like an early 4th of July. But I knew that it wasn't firecrackers. It was gunshots, and a lot of them. I couldn't help but think of what they were seeing. All of those people. Did they have a manifestation of their last thoughts too? Then I thought of my wife and my 1-year-old son. I ran towards our break room, which led out to where our cars were parked. I called my wife immediately, praying that she would pick up the phone. After a few rings, a panicked voice picked up.
"John, you're scaring me. You're scaring our kid. Why are you even home? You said some nasty things to me," she screamed through the phone.
I didn't have time to console her or to talk her down from her husband rage. I had to work quick. Listen to me closely. Is the door locked?" I asked.
"Yes,"
my wife replied.
"I'm about to unlock it. Stop banging on it."
I could hear my little one screaming in fear. She must have been holding him when I called. I hoped that I wasn't too late. "Don't open the door, Amy! That's not me!" I screamed into the phone. I knew that that really wasn't going to have the effect that I wanted, but it was something. I was standing in our custodial break room now. There was glass everywhere, and a lot of blood. I knew instantly that one of my coworkers didn't have the same sense that I did.
What?
My wife stammered. I could hear her unlatch the deadbolt. Beyond that, I could hear a faint voice.
"Come on, babe. Unlock the door."
It was my voice. At that point, I had ignored the large amounts of blood around me, and I got into my car, fired it up, and tore out of the parking lot as fast as I could with my phone gripped firmly in my hand.
"What do you mean, don't open the door?"
asked my wife. Her voice was frantic. I could hear my baby crying in the background. He was so scared.
I can hear you right outside,"
she said. I had to cut her off. "Listen, Amy, I'm in the car and I'm headed home. That is not me outside the door. That's an imposter. Something is going on. Lock the deadbolt and hide in the bathroom. Don't let me in." I could hear her breathing on the other line. Then I heard the deadbolt click back into place. The baby was still crying, and that voice, was still pretending to be me, but it was now screaming, and the voice had audibly changed.
"Oh my God, what's going on? Its voice changed. It's banging on the door,"
Amy said. At this point, I was pulling into our apartment complex, thankful that we lived so close to where I worked. I pulled my car up to the apartment building's front door and I ran inside. There were screams coming from all over the buildings. Some of the apartment doors were blown off their hinges, others were cracked. There was so much blood on the walls, and the ceilings, and the floors. I tried to ignore this as best I could. My only priority was my wife and child, and my heart sank as I reached our apartment door. Our door was hanging off one hinge. It had large cracks in it, along with some deep claw marks. I ran inside, frantically calling my wife's name. I could hear the soft cry of my frightened son, but no one else answered. I ran into the master bathroom where I had told my wife to hide. The bathroom door was obliterated, and there, well, I'm gonna stop right there. I don't need to explain how my wife looked. What I saw haunts me to this day, and I hope that my son was too young to really have this as a memory. I will say this, she protected our boy. Whatever it was that took her and so many from us, they got what they wanted. It left my son there to cry and hold his mother's hand. He looked at me, covered in blood and tears, and held his arms out to me so that I could pick him up. Whatever had attacked them, thankfully, wasn't in my form. At least, that's what I hoped was the case. My son and I recovered like most of our town and the surrounding area. Out of our population of 2,500 people, 1,900 bodies were found, and over 300 were never recovered. Yes, you're hearing me right. Only 300 people survived that night. The government came and swept our town and covered everything up. The bodies that were found were taken for analysis and never returned, including my wife and the mother of my child. We were given an order to vacate our homes and to relocate to towns the government had set up shelters at. We were given enough money to start over, and some of us were even able to find jobs. Our town was eventually wiped off the map and locked down. The last I heard, a government facility had opened up near the quarry, and the security there is insanely tight. Whatever happened, happened. My son is still alive, and his smile and laughter is what keeps me going every day. Sometimes, though, he walks towards the front door of our new home and sits down. When I ask him what he's doing, he looks over and smiles his half smile and asks, "Where's Mommy?" It takes everything to keep myself from breaking down. I've kept in touch with some of the other survivors, and they've told me that the ones who have tried to talk have been silenced, and the rest are in fear for their lives. Would this be considered talking? Well, I've left out some details, changed some names, and I've even changed the location. I hope that maybe if the government reads this, they'll understand. It's an outlet for me to try and let go of the pain. There was one man I talked to that gave those things a name. He was an older man who had lost his entire family to the incident. We sat down for a cup of coffee one day, and I asked him what he thought it was. He smiled this nearly toothless grin and waved his hand dismissively. When he saw that I was serious, he placed his hand on mine and spoke very softly. The spirits were very angry that we had defiled their land, so they sent their own kind to deliver vengeance to those who had wronged them, said the old man, looking straight at me. He then took a deep breath and locked his eyes into mine and spoke only one word: Wendigo.